Death Stranding 2 is a very polarizing game for me, which is ironic because critically and commercially it seems to be nothing but a success. It's receiving a ton of praise and accolades, and honestly, I can see why a lot of people feel that way. But it's just funny that I personally feel so conflicted because the first installment of the game was supposed to be the divisive and polarizing one, while the second iteration is regarded as a near perfect sequel. And let me be clear, this game is a great sequel. So many things that I and others complained about in the first game have been corrected or iterated upon in the second game, and I think the game is honestly better off for it. Throughout the review, I will touch on basically all of these improvements, but one example is the day-night cycle. This was something that I definitely yearned for in the first game. I wouldn't say it was immersion breaking, but for a game that's all about being outside in nature, delivering packages, it was weird for the time of day to never change. It didn't make the first game bad, but it's sure a welcome addition in the second game. As was the weather system. It was cool to go through a dust storm in the game, or a blizzard or avalanche or torrential downpours or a bushfire, or experience floods and gatequakes, aka earthquakes. That being said, the weather system is quite surface level, which is actually a theme of a lot of the changes in Death Stranding 2 for me. While it's a fun idea, it didn't really change the way I had to play the game. I could still drive through a dust storm in my truck. Same goes for the blizzards. Sure, visibility is extremely bad, but you can just rely on your map or a pre-planned route to guide you through. The bushfires were extremely few and far between, and seemed to be more tied to certain deliveries than anything else. They didn't just pop up randomly and make you have to overcome and adapt to something unexpected, at least not in my experience. Sure, the game gives you a tar cannon to combat these fires, but I literally never used it once. I would just drive through with my trike and avoid the fire, grab my package, and peace out. Which brings me to a big point with this game. Even though they have made all of these nice quality of life changes, they are very surface level. The weather system is cool, but the weather events are either super infrequent so they never cause much of a problem, or they are just there for novelty and never actually affect your gameplay. And this can be a good or bad thing depending on your perspective. A lot of people really complained how arduous and obnoxious the first game was, the walking system and how you could tumble over too easily. Believe me, I too complained about this. I repeatedly talked on stream about how jank the controls were in the first game, and I'm pleased to report that in the second game it feels a lot more fluid and nice to play. Driving especially. My god, was driving bad in the first game, and while it isn't amazing in the second game, it's completely serviceable and never was bad enough to ruin my enjoyment of the game. It just worked, and that's all it needed to do. The walking as well. I don't think I tumbled over more than like twice in this game, if that. It was just a lot less jank, and from the opening scene of the game, I could tell the walking and running was definitely made easier. I played Death Stranding 1 just a couple months ago in preparation for the new game, and it was a night and day difference in feel. And speaking of that opening scene, my god, I have a 4090 in my PC, and I've seen many games at their peak visual fidelity, but the opening scene blew me away. I could not believe how good this game looks on a base PS5. I'm mostly a PC gamer at this point, but I do play console now and then, and I know we say this every generation, which is laughable when you look back at some games that you thought looked amazing back in the day. Looking at you, GoldenEye 007. But I truly don't know where we are going to go from here fidelity-wise. We're pushing the limits of how real games can look, and I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this is the best looking console game that I've ever played. Norman Reedus' face, the girls when they're doing their poses for pictures, it is remarkable how gorgeous this game looks. And on that note, it also runs incredibly well. I think I had 1 or 2 frame drops in my whole playthrough, and sometimes the menu would delay when I hit pause, but outside of that, it ran literally flawlessly. I have 107 hours in this game and not one crash. The optimization for this game is about as good as it gets. And while we're glazing the game and its visuals, its photo mode is the most impressive photo mode I've ever seen in any video game. There are so many options you can choose, and I even made the thumbnail for this video with the photo mode from the game. Just truly impressive stuff. But back to the gameplay elements of the game, every single rough edge from the first game has been sanded down to be easy and more forgiving in the second game, which to me is probably why it's been so well received. I think the gaming world at large doesn't want to be super challenged in a video game. They just want to enjoy a cool story. A lot of people hated the slow pacing in the first game, but this game just jumps right into it, which is very welcome. I remember doing all these deliveries by foot in the first 10 or so hours of the first game, where you get a vehicle basically instantly in this one. Again, a welcome addition for most. To me, I'm pretty neutral. I liked the first game for what it was, and I liked the second game for what it is. But for people who didn't like the first game, I think they will like the second one so much more because it's just much less abrasive. A great example of the pared down difficulty is BTs, which were a real obstacle in the first game. I remember crouching and holding my breath so much in the first game and being genuinely freaked out when they were around because they would basically kill your delivery if they got to you. In the second game, on many occasions, I would just drive around the BTs, which you could do in the first game as well, but it was much harder. And on the rare occasion I did actually get caught, I could literally just drive through the tar and get away. In the first game, if you were caught, it was gonna be a long detour. Again, I put up with it in the first game and I didn't mind it. I just played the hand that was dealt to me in the first game. And in the second game, I did the same thing. I don't like it any less or more because BTs are way less threatening. It's just different. But I will say this. You don't get the same satisfaction in the second game as the first game. I 5-starred every vendor in both games, but it took me a lot less time in the first game. And a big reason for this is you were rewarded for optimization and overcoming the challenges that the game throws at you. In this game, it's so piss easy that to make it to 5-star every vendor in this one, they just dragged out the runtime. This game definitely has more vendors than the last game, and at least to me, it feels like it takes more deliveries to level them up. Maybe it's just because there are so many to level up that it feels this way, but yeah, it isn't really a challenge to 5-star all these vendors, it's just a matter of how much time you're willing to put in. With the exception of Mr. Impossible, those boys do have some pretty tough deliveries. But outside of that, yeah, it's just a matter of time. Not a question of if, but when. Where in the first game, I could level them up quite quickly by being super efficient, which I like. I like when games have skill gaps. So speaking of difficulty, if you haven't played this game yet, then I highly recommend playing on the hardest difficulty. I only didn't do this because A, I knew the first game was at least a decent challenge on regular, and B, I wanted to make some content on this game, so I figured if I played the hardest difficulty, I'd be slowing myself down to make content. But I legit don't think I died once. I never had to repatriate. I think I actually did once because of something dumb. I got caught by the 3 dog BTs on my way to the fisherman and had nothing to fight them with, but I then just loaded a previous save instead because I didn't want my cargo to be damaged. The fun that I get from this game is connecting everything. I enjoy building every road, every monorail, and 5-starring every vendor. I'm a bit OCD in real life, and this translates to games. If there's a task to complete, I feel I must do it. Granted, I didn't do every aid request in the game, but I do feel like I should. Maybe someday. And speaking of aid requests, those were a nice addition. Just little side quests that you can do to help people out. But back to building every road and 5-starring every vendor, for me, the process of doing that was less enjoyable in the second game than the first. In the first, you felt really accomplished when you built a new road because they took a ton of materials to upgrade, so you had to be patient to upgrade them. In this game, you can upgrade them way easier. Just another way of how they pared down the difficulty in every way. Another big one is your weapons. In the first game you had bullet types. Some would knock a human out, others would kill a human, and others could damage BTs. And you didn't want to kill humans because it could trigger a void out if you didn't dispose of the body. So there were trade-offs. In this game you can just use bullets on any target. Which, don't get me wrong, it's very convenient, but in the same breath it reduces the skill gap. You can just head out on basically any delivery without needing any forethought. In the first game, you needed to bring ladders and climbing anchors, and sure, you still can use those things in this game, but it doesn't feel nearly as mandatory. And on that note, vehicles can go basically anywhere in this game. I remember taking the long, slow journey up the mountain by foot in the first game, and it was rewarding because you knew you were on your way to the end game, and you were going to have to battle this mountainous terrain to finish off your journey. So when I unlocked the mountain in the second game, I figured it was going to be the same way. The game had given no resistance up to this point, so I figured it was finally going to once I got to the mountain. But nope, I just drove my truck up the mountain, even without ice spikes. But then later you do unlock studded tires for your vehicle, so you can drive through the mountain ranges even easier. To me, this game felt more like a checklist than the first one. I still enjoyed doing the deliveries and being hyper efficient, but in this game, it isn't required of you. So the payoff felt dramatically lessened than it did in the first. In Death Stranding 2, you can just throw on some YouTube on your laptop or phone and just vibe out while you run from point A to point B. No thought required. Or you can use the music player which they added to the game. Again, a super welcome addition, and speaking of that, I will never listen to Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head the same ever again. Damn, that song is catchy. They did a great job with the soundtrack in this game, so props for that. But back to my critiques. Another thing I complained about in the first game was the cheesiness of the story, specifically the naming of the characters. Deadman, who's the Frankenstein character, Die Hardman for the guy who is hard to kill. You get it. And sadly, the theme is present in this game as well. Rainy makes it rain. Tarman drives our new ship through the tar. Dollman is a doll. You get it. This is just a personal preference, but I find this shit super cringe. Same goes for the destination names. Early in the game, I was actually hopeful when they had decent names in Mexico like Villa Libre and Ciudad del Norte. But then when we got to Australia, it was a lot of direction plus not, just like the first game. East Fort not, West Fort not, Terminal Fort not, etc. A pretty minor gripe, but just something that bugs me personally. I wasn't a huge fan of the first game's story, and I'm not a big fan of this one either. I will go into some spoilers here, so you've been warned, but I'm not a huge story guy in most games. I mostly play for the gameplay, so the spoilers won't be super egregious. This isn't some deep dive on the story, but I will be touching on the theme of the story. But yeah, the story just wasn't it for me, just like in the first game. That being said, and this is a big caveat, I do love what the story represents. While the characters I find pretty cringe, I do love the idea. How we need to stay connected to each other to be happy and live fulfilling lives. I think it's a beautiful message, even if the delivery mechanism is not my cup of tea. At the very end, the APAC, which by the way is a corporation that took over the government, an apt parallel for the United States of America who's ran by corporations but has a quasi-democratic system to make the people feel like they have a voice, even though in reality they really don't and their government makes decision after decision to reduce the quality of life for the average person while enriching the already rich. But at the end of the game, APAC says that they will have control over the movements of everyone, and by doing this, they will keep humanity from adapting and changing. They will become stagnant, never pushing themselves, never evolving, just staying in their little shelters disconnected from the outside world. But in so doing, they can avoid extinction. They will never come into contact with another BT, and there will be no more void outs. And at the end of the game, we reject this path. Again, the message it sends is great. You can have hypochondriacs who live in their little bubble all their life, so afraid of death that they never really lived. Sure, they are alive and breathing, but keeping yourself cooped up inside, afraid of the outside world, is not truly living. I really enjoyed that message, and there are many similar messages sprinkled throughout the game about connections making you happier, and it's super true. I always feel so fulfilled after seeing my friends and family. In fact, a bit of a personal anecdote here, but I was in a rough place in early 2022, as I'm sure many of you were as well. COVID was coming on 2 years running, and I just wanted to see my friends and do stuff again. I had gained weight, and I was just not in a good place mentally. I booked a concert in May, and it was so fun. Even the musicians were saying how nice it was to be back out performing for the crowds. And then in June, I went to Switzerland to visit my sister who lives there and see the friends that I've made there over the years. And it just filled my soul with joy. And when I got back, I started working out again, just biking and running. And fast forward a few months, I had dropped nearly 50 pounds and met the love of my life. And needless to say, life has been great since. But being able to see my friends and connect was a big motivator for me to get back to how I had lived pre-pandemic. Isolation is a killer. Remember that. So yeah, the overarching theme of the story, awesome. The actual story, I wasn't blown away. Clair Obscure Expedition 33 was a wonderful story to me. I loved the characters, the premise, and the story beats. In this game, I don't connect with any of these characters, and I find a lot of the story to be quite cringe, especially Higgs. He's just so over the top and goofy. There's no depth to him at all. He just wants to watch the world burn. Just a true bad guy in every sense of the word. And then when you contrast this with a villain like Renoir from Clair Obscure, it just makes him feel even more cringe. I know it may not be a fair comparison because they're completely different games and genres and everything, but when I just played an amazing game with a story that I adored, it makes it feel even worse when it's so fresh in my mind. That being said, I do like some of the creativity associated with Higgs, namely his electric guitar gun thing. Very out there and weird. Very Kojima. But speaking of themes, if you haven't already, you should read all the updates in the corpus in the Strand social service. There are great lessons in those too. They liken the Death Stranding and all the crazy weather events to things that are occurring in our world thanks to climate change. There's also some pro-vaccine messages in the game. And back to corpus, I read every single one, hours and hours of reading, and I only noticed like 2 grammar or spelling mistakes. So well done to the people typing those out. And another theme they touch on is they talk about the wish for weapons to no longer be needed, to live in harmony as a species. And god damn it, I love that. Genuinely, fuck war. Have you seen the shit going on in Palestine? Thousands of children losing their lives and beautiful buildings being completely decimated? And for what? Seriously, for fucking what? Destroying a society, costing billions in damages while spending billions on the weapons to do said damage? It's a fucking joke. We easily could live in a world where no one goes hungry ever again, but we aren't allowed because of people's greed for money and power. It's fucking shameful. We don't have a lack of resources, we have a problem with our allocation of resources. I'm sorry, but until everyone has a roof over their head and food to eat, then billionaires don't need yachts and vacation homes. So fuck yeah, Kojima. I too dream of a world where we don't need weapons.
Guns and violence, the whole damn world could be yours. Same as it ever was.
And speaking of weapons, they really bring the heat in this game with a plethora of them. We have a sniper rifle, a machine gun, tons of grenades to either play into a more stealthy or offensive playstyle, tons of different ways you can take down enemies in this game. And you know what? By and large, it doesn't even matter. Again, this game is so damn easy that you can just rock up with basically any weapon and be able to succeed, and it's a shame, honestly. You unlock the Pizza Chef's CQC combat moves, but outside of one of the VR training sessions, you never need to use it. All the stealth options like a decoy grenade or a silenced pistol doesn't even matter. Sure, you can sneak around the enemies if you want, but the game never demands that of you. Sure, it's nice the option is there, but it's infinitely easier to go in there guns a-blazing and just mow everyone down and collect your cargo and dip. And maybe that's a me issue. Maybe I could have explored the vast variety of sandbox options so that I got a deeper understanding and appreciation for all the stuff that was added to this game. But I'm a goal-oriented person. If my mission is to retrieve cargo, I'm going to use the quickest and easiest option, which was always to just shoot 'em up. And this could have been a pretty easy gameplay fix, even if some of the orders said retrieve this cargo without being spotted. That would have made a world of difference. It would have forced the player to learn the environment, to watch the enemy's patrol path and figure out when to strike to take them out silently without being noticed, to scope out a vantage point to survey the situation and see if you can find a path to being undetected without having to take out numerous enemies on your way, to actually use the decoy grenades they offer you. But there's none of that. You can just stand out in the open, no cover necessary, and just fire away at the stupid enemies with stormtrooper level aim. So to me, that was a big missed opportunity. When I started the game, I was hyped that Sam had an upgrade path. You can level up your shooting, combat skills, cargo carrying capacity, lung capacity. I thought, hell yeah, that's awesome. Sure, it provides benefits, but those benefits are not needed because the game is just too easy. And same goes with the A-Pass upgrades. When I saw that, I thought, hell yeah, this is sick. And some of these do provide some meaningful enhancements, which is very nice, but again, it isn't needed. It's not like you have to be changing them around depending on if you're doing a boss BT battle or just standard deliveries. They don't really move the needle. But it would have been cool if they did, if you had an element of build crafting in this game to overcome some of the boss fights. But again, it's all just surface level. A cool addition, but ultimately meaningless in the wider context of the game. Back to some of the quality of life changes though, being able to grab chiral crystals from the trike is amazing. I hated having to hop off my trike every time in the first game just to pick up one chiral crystal, then get back on and continue driving. And later, with a certain pair of gloves, you can also fetch cargo and crystals from a pickup off-roader. And the off-roader has tons of cool attachments, which is also pretty neat. Again, just so many amazing additions from the first game. Lots of things to make the gameplay more pleasant and reduce the friction that was present in Death Stranding 1. Before I wrap things up, I also want to comment on something that I really appreciate, and that is Kojima's love for art and other literature. There's one part where you can read Moby Dick and Frankenstein in your private room, and then Dollman goes on to give some exposition, and you can see the parallels of how it relates to things in the game world. How what happened in the books was used to inspire events in the game. Kojima named the brothers Victor and Igor after the characters in Frankenstein. The DHV Magellan is an obvious nod to an explorer from the 16th century. And in the Corpus Post, there's lots of references to historical time periods or different societies. I won't cite those here, but again, I will reiterate, do yourself a favor and read the Corpus Post. There's some really interesting stuff in there. And I really appreciated these additions and nods to historical events and figures. No art is truly unique. We all take inspiration from somewhere, and I always appreciate it when people are upfront and honest about what inspires them. And another nice addition is the inclusion of a ton of Easter eggs to find, from doing suborders that trigger unique missions like the Night Riders or the Pizza Chef. If you know, you know. to looking up at the stars and seeing Kojima's face while you chill in a hot spring, to the doll man dance to a catchy tune. Easter eggs are always a welcome addition to any game, and I'm sure this game has more than I even know about. I haven't gotten the Platinum Trophy, and I probably won't, but I did build every road and monorail and 5-starred every vendor, which is all I really wanted to do, to connect the world as best I can and help out my fellow porters. As of writing this script, I have over 650,000 likes, which is pretty awesome. And on that note, that is another thing that bothered me. In the first game, it was pretty obvious when I was close to the endgame, so I made sure to 5-star every vendor beforehand and build every highway and zipline that I could. In every game I play, I like to accomplish everything I can before completely beating the main story. It's just such a satisfying way to finish a game, knowing you did everything before rolling credits. But sadly, in this game, it doesn't allow you to do that. I got locked out of fast travel with the DHV Magellan in like chapter 9, and there are 16 chapters. But even if I had started 5-starring shelters before then, you don't unlock the last main shelter in Terminal Fort Knot until you beat the main story basically. And there are a couple hidden shelters that I didn't find until after I rolled credits. Maybe you can find them before, I'm not sure. But it just feels bad. The game is praising you for connecting all of Australia, but you still have red on your map for areas that haven't been connected to the chiral network. Again, this isn't some huge indictment of the game as a whole, it's just a personal preference that doesn't sit right with me. Again, to go back to Clair Obscur, I explored damn near everything in that game before I went and beat Simon, and it was such a satisfying thing to end on. In God of War and God of War Ragnarok, the last thing I had to do was beat the Queen Valkyrie to achieve the Platinum Trophy. Again, a super satisfying way to bookend an incredible journey. Even the first Death Stranding, I delivered that final pizza to 5-star the last vendor and saw the secret underground bunker and then proceeded back to where it all began on the east coast of the United States to wrap up the story. The journey felt complete. With Death Stranding 2, it was a hollow victory for me finishing the game, knowing I had more things that I wanted to accomplish. To wrap things up, I do still enjoy the base premise of the game, making deliveries and doing them quickly and efficiently, but ultimately, I just think this franchise is not really for me. They aren't bad games by any means, and I would never say that Death Stranding 2 is a bad video game. Like I said, it's exceptionally polished, has beautiful visuals, and I do really love the message that it sends. And from a sequel perspective, it improves so much of what many people found to be lacking in the first game. They did a great job of improving and building upon the first game, which is what a sequel should ultimately do. But there's just no challenge in the gameplay for me. The mechanics are serviceable, but they aren't amazing. Other games have better shooting, better driving, but I would be lying if I said that these weren't massively improved from the first game. Overall, I think this was a game that was made to appeal to the masses, all difficulty removed so that it can tell the story it wants to tell, and that's fine. But for me, it just doesn't really resonate, and that's okay. Anyways, that's it for my review of Death Stranding 2. Let me know down below what you thought of the game. If you want to see more reviews of games I've played, then be sure to subscribe and check out my review of Death Stranding 1 next. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.